and welcome to Tafakari. If you're new here, Tafakari is a Kiswahili word that means to ponder, to contemplate, or to think deeply, and that is what we encourage on this channel. Right, so we carry on with our decolonial AI development conversations, and today we shall be speaking about AGI and its connection to coloniality. And to help us understand this is an article by Timnit, Gebru, and Émile Torres, I hope I said that right. And the title is the TESCREAL bundle, that is what I'll choose to call it. Eugenics and the Promise of Utopia Through Artificial General Intelligence. And so we are going to look at this paper over probably 2 or 3 episodes to do a close reading, because I think it's so important in understanding AGI and why it's so problematic and its connection to coloniality. So let us start by saying, what is AGI? And just a close reading of the abstract and the first 3 pages. The intention with AGI is to create these AI systems that have unfathomable intelligence. And what really came out for me here is that they go on to say in the introduction that, just the same way that AI has so many definitions, it's the same thing here with AGI. There are just as many definitions as there are many people who are working on these systems. But I think one that is memorable to me is the one that they quote, which is OpenAI's definition. That is, the goal is to create highly autonomous systems that, as they say, can perform, what do they say? Can perform valuable economic tasks that humans do, something to that effect. Now, the thing about AGI is that it has so much hype. And AGI, for those, is the acronym for Artificial General Intelligence. It has so much hype. So you can see that they want to create highly autonomous systems that can perform, comparatively well to humans across a range of tasks. That's my short definition of it. And a typical conversation on platforms wherever you go to is that it's associated with development, it's associated with utopia, literally, especially when I read this paper. But then, the thing about these discourses is that they detract, or rather they distract us from asking fundamental questions. And I like the fundamental questions that they cite here, 2 of them. First of all, they say there's so much hype right now around building AGI that people have moved on to building or talk about building safe AGI. But they say, before we even talk about that, can we first talk about, should AGI be built? And a second question that I find especially important because it's related to coloniality is, what is the ideology underpinning AGI? And that's why it gets interesting. And so now we are going to the part where, how does this relate to coloniality? Because now they say the ideology underpinning AGI is based on the Anglo-American Eugenics movement. And what is the Eugenics movement? So I'm just going to read here off the website of the National Human Genome Research Institute. And this is what it says. It says, eugenics is the scientifically erroneous and immoral theory of racial improvement and planned breeding, which gained popularity during the early 20th century. Eugenicists worldwide believed that they could perfect human beings and eliminate so-called social ills through genetics and heredity. They believed the use of methods such as involuntary sterilization, segregation, and social exclusion would rid society of individuals deemed by them to be unfit. Now, those of you who have been on this channel for the past few weeks, you know what the moment you have something that talks about racial improvement and planned breeding, racial improvement, already we have a racial component. So that here now we have white supremacy. This other idea also of finding a way through genetics of getting rid of people who are deemed unfit to live. And in that, you have differently abled people. There are so many people in this category of theirs. Let me say of theirs. And this is how, the moment you make that connection, you're able to correlate with something that we've been talking here called decoloniality of being. And we have emphasized that the coloniality of being in this work of decolonial work refers to a system in which the European colonizer socially categorized the human race and then from there did a vertical hierarchization, so that the European colonizer was at the top. And then from there, other races followed, and their importance, or rather their decision as to whether they were human, was determined by their lightness. And so obviously, what this means is that black people who are considered antithetical to whiteness experience the damaging effects of this the most. Because in this schema, this was a schema that involved European development, not development, modernity. I don't like calling it development if it means that others died. So this schema now is what justified the genocide, the linguicide, the epistemicides of non-Western people, on the basis that they were deemed inferior by virtue of being non-white. They bore the brand of Western-centric modernity. And the thing is, even within this schema, there are so many heterogeneities because there's a patriarchal element, which is how you find that even in this schema, it is the European male who is at the top. There's an aspect of being able-bodied, of being cisgender. And that is why you find in decolonial work, when they describe the current power structure that is in place in the world right now, it captures a lot of those heterogeneities. Because in essence, this power structure is described as Euro-North American, racist, patriarchal, heteronormative, capitalist, imperialist, elitist. And all this is based off the fact that it is only a small segment of society that is deemed fit to enjoy the fruits of the development. So that's why I said the moment, like when they talk about AGI in the paper and they help us understand what is the foundational, or rather the governing ideology in this AGI, is that it's based on that Anglo-American eugenics movement, then we have a problem. We have a problem because anything that is based off white supremacy, the elevation of patriarchy, the elevation of able-bodied people vis-a-vis others, the elevation of heteronormativity, anytime you have that, then already we are working with differences, and we are working with a justification that certain people do not belong and others belong. And that's why the question that they ask is very important. Should this thing be built in the first place? And really, when you hear that, it shouldn't, because this is now a coloniality problem. It's a coloniality problem because there's a justification of anything that is underpinned by this idea of eugenics means that only a very few segments, a very few people will enjoy the benefits of this. That is what it means. The rest are deemed expendable, are deemed invisible, are deemed worthy of dehumanization in the quest of something like this. It's as simple as that. Because when we talked about the coloniality of being, what did you say the implications were? The implications of that ranking is such that certain humans paid the price. That is, non-Western people paid the price, and it was justified on the basis of color. It was justified on the basis of patriarchy. It was justified on the basis of sexuality. So that when you have all those many things interacting together, the only people who get to have a really good time in this development are people who are male, are cisgender, are able-bodied, etc. Only that. The rest is a life of damnation. And that's why Fanon could say that European development was scandalous, because it was built on the blood and sweat of Arabs, of Negroes, etc., and other colored peoples. You see that? And so when you have that understanding, it really helps you understand why would we be building something that is just a continuation of the characteristic power structure of empire for the last 500 years. Because for the last 500 years, it is this schema of Euro-North American patriarchal heteronormative capitalist imperialist. It is this schema that has brought so much suffering in the world. So anything that is built on these principles that pay homage to white supremacy, that pay homage to patriarchy, imperialism, capitalism, and that elevate able-bodied people, all that, there's a problem. And that's why I like what they said. Should we be building it? And we shouldn't, because it's just a continuation of coloniality. As we've said many times here on this channel, coloniality is the darker side of Western-centric modernity. That is what has been the issue. And they even draw attention to other issues because they say, already the building of AI systems has been very problematic, in the sense that we have marginalized groups that have borne the brunt of this through labor exploitation, and here we have discussed the data workers. We are also bearing the brunt through deepening extractivism. That's when you can see in the Congo, or you also in South America. There's also even, and this they don't mention here, but really I would add on to that, the externalization of data center costs to other regions that don't reap the benefits. So already we know that the AI development's it is built on exploitative power structure. In fact, others say that there are elements of coloniality. I say no. It is colonial. It is coloniality. It is coloniality, not that it has elements of coloniality. So now, you can imagine this is the foundation that is underpinning AGI. And if you imagine that just the simple building of these systems, the LLMs and stuff like that, already is associated with that. Now, think about that eugenics underpinning, and also currently as we speak, AGI is living up to mega exploitation. And you can see this in the way that right now there are so many protests in the US with the expansion of these data centers. Because what is also not mentioned in this AGI, aside from all that, is that there's a lot of resource intensiveness, right? And that is how you have the protests in data centers. That is how you have people in South America protesting, also the expansion of those in their territories. Already we have deepening extractivism in the Congo, with lithium exploration, it's just a mess. So that's all I had for today in terms of just in the introduction part where we do a close reading, where we see how, we need to ask fundamental questions. Because as you see now, beyond the hype, and I like what they say, that, it keeps on surviving a lot of funding and a lot of development, emancipatory discourse. when you start asking deeper questions, you realize there's a very dark side to this. So that is all that I had for now. And that's just based off a close reading of the first 3 pages. So next week we carry on with the next segment and deeper into the association between AGI and coloniality. So until next time, kwaherini.